Okay, so the next lesson is actually opening the software which you're going to use to program your own virtual microcontrollers. So we've installed on the school network something called Flowol. Now mine is down here on the dock, but yours might appear somewhere on this side of your screen. So double click to open Flowol. In fact, Mrs. Booth is going to assist in doing the clicking because whilst the board is touch sensitive, it's not very accurate. Okay, so once you've got the software open, you should be presented with this screen here, which gives you options to use a mimic, connect to an interface, and open a flowchart that you saved earlier. Now the interface would be a download cable, just like the earlier video about the microcontroller. Now we're not going to use that, but we will be using a mimic. Okay, so we're going to click on use a mimic. Now mimics are what the software uses as virtual representations of an event or an occurrence. In this case, we can see the mimics we've got range from simple ones in the top left, like zebra crossings, down to train set 2, which is one of the most complex virtual scenarios that you can learn to program. We're not going to start with zebra crossing because it's even a bit too simple. We're going to start with crossing patrol. So double click on crossing patrol and you're presented with this quite familiar image. We've got the usual scenario of a road, presumably nearby a school, and we can see a sign that motorists see as they approach the crossing, giving warning that there is a crossing ahead. Now, normally, during the beginning of school and at the end of school, there are two lights that are flashing. And we can see on the right-hand toolbar, there are two output buttons, and if you click either of them, it will illuminate in your mimic the equivalent light. So you click either or, and they can both be on at the same time, or they can both be on or off. And clicking on those allows you to turn the various outputs on. Now we've only got the two outputs in this mimic, the top light and the bottom light. Now if you've ever watched one of these, you will realise that an actual crossing patrol, the lights alternate between top and bottom. So we need to replicate that with a simple flowchart. Now flowchart, the symbols are found down the left-hand toolbar. Okay, and the symbols that we can access are given to us automatically depending which mimic we've opened. So it should introduce us to the various tools in a kind of progressive and easy to follow method. So we use a system called drag and drop to get our symbols on screen. Now the first symbol for every flowchart is the same. It must begin with this lozenge shape, and once we've dragged and placed that somewhere at the top left-hand corner of your screen, you open this automatic box, which gives us three options: start, stop, and sub. Now we'll get to those others, stop and sub, later in the lessons. So to begin with, click start, and it will automatically put start in that lozenge for you. All flowcharts need to begin with that symbol, with that word in it. Now the next thing we need to tell the program to do is to turn one of the outputs on, and you do that with the second symbol down, a parallelogram. Now if you place it directly under start, it will automatically connect for you. If you manage to place it a bit too far down below, you could perhaps undo Mrs. Booth. If you go too far below, it won't automatically wire it up, and you would need to manually do it with the black arrow. Click in start, then click in the parallelogram. It's easier if you get the hang of it just to place it in the directly underneath, but you need to know how to do manual wiring as well. Okay, so the outputs box opens this, and we have options now to turn the top light or the bottom light either on or off. And you can click in those buttons, and you can also do two options at the same time. So you can have one light turning on and the alternative light turning off. So once you've chosen what you want to occur on and off, then you click OK, and it will transfer your command into the parallelogram, into the output box. Okay, so we turned the top light on and the bottom light off. Now flowcharts run in microcontrollers, but they do exactly what you tell them to do. So we now need to give it a indication of how long to have that event occurring for. So we use a delay symbol. The delay symbol is always in seconds, and a reasonable amount of time for a flash is actually quite short. So we would say decimal 2. So that's 0.2, okay. And that will put in a delay of 0.2 of a second. Any longer than that, and it just looks too long. Now Mrs. Booth hasn't automatically connected, so she's going to click in the box above and below to draw that connection in. So we turn the top light on, the bottom light off, and we've asked it to wait for 0.2 of a second. So now we need to swap those two conditions over. So we turn the top light off, the bottom light on, and we've made a connection. So the flowchart begins, turns the top light on, bottom light off, it waits, it swaps over the condition. Now, the most common mistake would be to repeat that pattern and go back to the start, and that's, you'd think, would have completed the flowchart, but we mustn't forget that the second delay is required. Now, to get back to the start, we call this a return or a loop. We need to click in the final delay and then back to the start for your last click. And that puts a feedback loop that makes the program endlessly run without a stop. So it starts, light on, delay, change the lights, delay, back to the start, and it just endlessly repeats, which is what microcontrollers are perfect at doing. To see the result on the Mimic, you need to press the play or run button bottom left.